Problem number 4. A certain small ferry can accommodate 200 people every 15 minutes. How many people could take the ferry ride in 3 hours? When I look at this problem, I realize that I can solve this using a proportion. And I want to give you some clues so that you can learn how to recognize when you can solve this using a proportion. One way you could think about it is noticing that they give us a rate, 200 people every 15 minutes, and thinking about, okay, they give me a rate. Can I solve by coming up with another rate that's equivalent to the original rate? So you can think of it in that manner, because a proportion is when you have two equal rates or two equal fractions. Another way you can think about it is the fact that there are three numbers. That's something I noticed. And then I also noticed there has to be two pairs. So time goes with time, and people goes with people. The question is about how many people can ride the ferry in 3 hours. So I have two pairs and three numbers here, so I could solve using a proportion. Now that we know that we can solve using a proportion, the first thing we need to do is record this rate over here as one of our fractions. So we know that 200 people can ride the ferry every 15 minutes to get to their destination. People needs to be across from people, and the question mark is above the people, so that's going to be my x variable. You could use any variable you want, but that's the part I don't know, is how many people can ride the ferry in, and 3 hours is the time, so the 3 hours should go across from the 15 minutes. Now we do have a problem. It's fine to have people across from people, same units, but you can't have minutes across from hours. Those are different units. So what we need to do is either convert hours to minutes, or we need to convert the minutes to hours. Since the 15 minutes is just a fractional, will just be a fraction of an hour, I think it's going to be easier to change hours to minutes. So over here I'm going to show my work and say, all right, 3 hours is equal to how many minutes? This is when you write down your equivalence. Equivalence means equal. So I know that 1 hour equals 60 minutes. And I'm either going to multiply or divide by this equivalent 60 to get the number of minutes. Well, there are more minutes than there will be of hours. You know, you have 1 hour and 60 minutes. So we're going to, if you're thinking about whether you multiply or divide, you actually multiply by the equivalent. So I'm going to multiply by that 60, by that rate. And 3 hours times 60 gives me 180 minutes. So 3 hours is equal to 180 minutes. So I can actually cross out 3 hours and write 180 minutes because those are two equivalent time frames. So 180 minutes is the same as 3 hours, so I just crossed it out. Next, I'm going to set up my parentheses, and I'm going to multiply across. So I multiply 15 by x, and I place that in the parentheses over here on the left. And then I multiply the 200 by 180. And I'm going to take a shortcut to multiply these. I'm going to, in my mind, take off the zeros and just multiply 18 by 2, and 18 doubled is 36. And then I'm going to go ahead and put those zeros back on. 0, 0, 0, there's 3 of them. And then 15 times x is 15x. And then I'm going to notice that the 15 is separated from the x. Well, it looks like there's nothing in between, so that means multiplication. And the inverse of multiplication is division, so we divide both sides by the number that's keeping x from being alone. So we divide by the 15 because The 15 is what we're trying to make, in a sense, disappear so that x is isolated. 15 divided by 15 equals 1, so we get 1x is equal to, and I'm just going to use a calculator because otherwise this video is going to be super long. So 36,000 divided by 15 equals 2,400. So x equals 2,400. And it's not okay to just write 2,400. 2,400 what? We need the units on this. So x represented the number of people. So x equals 2,400 people. Let's just make sure this makes sense in context by reading the question again. How many people could take the ferry ride in 3 hours? And we got 2,400 people. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, the second question says, what was the rate per hour? So they're asking us to find a rate. Our clue words are the word per and the word rate to know that we're finding the unit rate of the constant of proportionality. To find the unit rate, you divide. Whoops. Let me go back to that. Alright, so that was sort of a happy accident. Everything disappeared and I had to rewrite it, but I was able to rewrite it and it looks a little bit clearer. So we were talking about finding the unit rate, and to find the unit rate you divide. So I just copied this rate down here, and the part we have to pay attention to is that it says hours. So I'm going to actually convert 15 minutes to hours, and I'm going to show you a little trick here. I drew, this is supposed to be a clock, and in a clock, you know, if you go all the way around with the minute hand, 60 minutes pass in an hour. Well, I broke that up into 15-minute increments. 15 plus 15 is 30. And then over here, 15 plus 15 is 30. So 30 minutes plus 30 minutes gives us 60 minutes. So I did all that to show you that there are 4 15-minute increments in 60 minutes. All right, to keep the fraction equal, basically I'm using scaling here. If I multiply by 4 down here, I need to multiply by 4 up here. 200 times 4, just focus on the 2 and the 4. 2 times 4 is 8, and then put the zeros back on. So that's 800 people every 60 minutes. Well, 60 minutes is the same as an hour. So there we go, we've solved it because we know that we have a unit rate when the denominator is 1. So this would be 800 people, P, per, and then H for hour. So 800 people can ride the ferry every hour. The other way we could have figured out this rate per hour is to say, hey, guess what? This rate was already in hours, and we found that for 3 hours, 2,400 people could ride the ferry. And this looks a little messy, so I wrote it over here. 2,400 people every 3 hours. And then we could just divide it to find the people per hours. So 24 divided by 3 is 8. So 2,400 divided by 3 is 800. So we found the exact same answer, but this is just a different method we used.